Okay, okay. Sorry. Okay. Alrighty, so we are going to use our time today to wrap up on all of Section 3 stuff, and then, so we'll do Section 3 in the IDs, Section 3 in your packets, and then we are ready in your, what's it called? Review question packet, I guess is the best way to call it. We're going to do the one that says the 1970s, which I just realized I didn't ever put up the notes to that yesterday, so I went ahead and put that in. And then tomorrow we might talk a little bit about the 80s, and then that'll just be it. It's crazy. Last couple of days, almost there. All right, I tell you what, let's do Section 3 IDs first, and then we'll go to the review packet, and then we'll do 27-3 in the packet. All the things. Okay. All right, so Section 3 is finishing up from our conversation that we had the other day about Cesar Chavez and migrant workers. So Section 3 is talking about the UFW, United Farm Workers Movement, and all that fun stuff. All right, so number 6, what are the national origins of the 3 main groups of Latinos in the United States? All right, so we categorize it as South America, or Latin Americans from South America, from Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, and the third group is anybody that is from Spain or Portugal in Europe. So I don't really know the best way to categorize that, but anybody from South America, the Caribbean, or Europe would be our 3 groups of Latino Americans in the United States. And it really depends on what country they're from as to some of their personal preference. Like, for example, I was trying to think of Shakira. I want to say Colombian. I know she's from South America, but I want to say she's from Colombia. And so it really depends on what country they're from as to how they personally want to be classified. If they want to be classified as Latino, Hispanic, or I don't know, I can't even or Spanish rather than a certain category. And of course, 9 times out of 10, and I think that this has just become an American thing, and I don't think people do it on purpose, but to where, you know, someone who looks Hispanic or Latino, calling them all Mexicans, happens all the time, but it just depends on where they're actually from as to if that for some people is an insult if they think that that's what you're just assuming, you know, and you're not actually caring about where they're actually from. All right, number 7 says, what is the American FI Forum? And that's talking about foreign language integration in schools, and encouraging, which most schools today do have foreign language that we offer, and 9 times out of 10 they offer multiple foreign languages, and usually the number 1 foreign language that will be offered is Spanish. So Spanish is the most common. The other most common language that is taught in secondary education schools, French. The new one is Mandarin. That was a new one, and it wasn't just us that jumped on that train of offering Mandarin. That was something that was popular in several schools. German is another one, and Russian. I didn't realize that, but at UNCG when I was going there, and I had chosen Spanish as my foreign language just because going into the field of education, that should have been the most obvious foreign language for me to be familiar with. And I didn't realize that actually UNCG, they had a very strong Russian program. Didn't know that, but I thought that was interesting. Question 8 says, what 2 court cases support Latino civil rights and how? And hold on, let me see if I can, let's see if I can pull up my PowerPoint. I wanted to see if the PowerPoint talked about that. I don't think it did. I don't think it talked about the court cases, or maybe it just talked about one and not both. But I was going to try and pull that up really quick just to see. I'll tell you what, skip 8. We'll come back to 8. Give me just a minute because I want to look at something. So go ahead and go to 9. 9 says, what achievements have been made by different Latino groups? And we're just going to, I guess, generalize it. And we're going to say more political and economic support. Political and economic support. And having more opportunities, and actually seeing more individuals be involved in political offices, as well as high-ranking positions and jobs, things like that. All right, let's see. Number 10 says, what is the Bilingual Education Act of 1968? We kind of already touched on that just a little bit, but it's the idea of offering classes for students that are interested in being bilingual, but also meeting the needs of students that are kind of being forced into it. So it's kind of a double-sided thing, to where it is talking about your ESL students that come in that only speak Spanish, and they're having to learn English. And then also offering Spanish, because again, it is the most common second language in the United States. So it's kind of a double program, to where it is, number 1, giving support to students who have Spanish as their primary language, and then also encouraging Spanish as one of the number 1 secondary language choices in the United States. Here's your question really quick. If you were talking about bilingual programs in Canada, what is the most common second language in Canada besides English?
Oh, I know this.
What'd you, I can't.
Is it French, maybe?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why my speakers aren't working, because I knew you were saying something to me and I couldn't hear it. But yeah, it is French. What am I saying? France. It is France. No, it is French, because actually, and I want to say it's Ontario, that feels right, to where it is the opposite, to where French is the primary language and English is the secondary language. And you see that on everything. You see that on their signs. You see that grocery stores, restaurants, wherever you go, to where, you know, if you're looking in the United States, usually you see something big, bold. We'll use restaurant menus as an example, depending on where you're at, obviously, to where it might either be big, bold letters in English and then in Spanish, small down below, or, you know, if you're going to a Mexican restaurant to eat lunch or something, it would be the opposite. You know, it would be big, bold letters would be in Spanish, and then sometimes they would have it written in English underneath. So if you were in Ontario, Canada, everything's going to be posted big, bold letters in French, and then a lot of times they have it translated into English somewhere else. Okay. All right. So I was trying to bring up, still can't, there it is. Hold on. I was going to see if I had those court cases in my notes, because I don't remember without looking. No, I don't. I thought maybe I did. I don't. And without pulling it up, I don't remember what they are. Okay, all right. If it comes to me, we'll jump back to it. If not, we're just going to move on. We're going to move on. Go to your review sheet packet and go ahead and open it up to, should be the back of the first page on the 1970s. And I just did post this in the Google Classroom, so it has the extra on it. And I apologize because I thought that I had already put it up, but I did not. All right, number 1 says, who became president after Nixon? And again, this was another making history moment because this had never happened before, to where usually if something happens to the president, it usually goes to who next?
The vice president.
Yeah, the VP, right? I mean, that's all part of the order of presidential succession. However, in this case, not only was Nixon in on the Watergate scandal, but his VP, Spiro Agnew, was in on it too. So who's third in line when it comes to presidential succession? It goes to Congress next. So who's going to be over the House of Representatives? You don't have to know the person, but what's their title? You know their title? That should be a question from civics class. Who'd y'all have for civics? Was it Fortune? Or did you have somebody else?
I had it in 8th grade.
Oh, okay. Okay. At middle school. Okay. Yeah. Who did it at middle school? Was it Grindstaff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that has been a while then. Third in line is going to be your Speaker of the House, over the House of Representatives. So that person at the time was Gerald Ford. So number 1, who became president after Nixon? It is going to be Ford. So Gerald Ford, again, making history, the first unelected president is Gerald Ford, because and you're like, well, wait a minute, what about VPs? Well, technically VPs are elected because they're on the ballot together. It's a package deal. When you vote for president, you're getting both president and vice president because they're running mates. It's a 2-for-1 deal. So he had not been elected, and so that was a new thing. Number 2, what did the new president do to Nixon? And Ford lost a lot of people when he did this, but he issued a presidential pardon. It was definitely a favor to Nixon. He was friends with Nixon, and he kind of was trying to do him a favor. And it's not that this necessarily erases what he did with the Watergate scandal, but he's just trying to, I don't know, soften the blow for him a little bit. And a lot of people got really mad. They're like, well, what the heck, man? He did something that he shouldn't have, and you're going to try and be nice to him after everything's over, All right, 3 says, what is the human rights agreement that was reached involving most major nations of the world? And let's see. I want to make sure that I'm right on what I'm about to say for this one too. Okay, hold on. I know what I'm thinking, but I just want to double check and make sure that I'm about to say the right thing. I thought it was referencing the Geneva Accords and civil rights, but let me just make sure that that's what I had put down. I think that's right. Man, this stuff is moving extra slow today. But I do want you, before you put anything down for number 3, do make yourself kind of like a side note that number 1 is referencing the 25th Amendment. That's how we figure out what's going to happen after the mess with Nixon. 25th Amendment, I try and think of something that rhymes so I don't forget it, but it's 25 president dies, even though that's not usually the case, He don't always die for something have to happen, he could resign, but that's the order of presidential succession, because, Speaker of the House is the furthest we've ever made it down. But after the Speaker of the House, if it ever goes that far, Speaker of the House, then it would be President pro tempore in the Senate. And then after that, it would go through the 15 secretaries over the departments. So And it's usually one of them that's randomly selected to not be at the State of the Union address in case all hell breaks loose and something happens to where they would fulfill those new responsibilities as the president. Okay. All right, hold on. Still not pulling up. I'm just going to pull it up this way so I can see it. No, that's not it. Hold on. Okay, all right, yep. I'm glad I looked it up because, yeah, I was right. It's actually the Helsinki Accords, and if you have your notes, then you can check it out. If not, then it's going to be on that page that says the 1970s. But it's the Helsinki Accords that are written between members of NATO and the Warsaw Pact that are enforcing civil rights for everybody. So again, this is a big movement because not only, because we know the Warsaw Pact are those countries that are communist. So the idea that we are encouraging and actually getting communist countries to work with NATO is a really big move. So, okay, I'm glad I double checked that because I was off on my thinking. All right, number 4 is the guy that's going to finish out the 70s. So who's the outsider who becomes president in 1976? And that is Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, they call him an outsider because he didn't do anything in Washington. He was a Washington outsider. He wasn't a congressman. He wasn't a member of the department. He wasn't affiliated with Washington at all. He was a governor from the great state of Georgia. And everybody really liked the fact that he was not tainted by Washington politics. And that's why he easily won the election. And what also made it super easy for him to win is the fact that he was associated with the other political party. Because Nixon, who was a Republican, is going to be blamed for the mess with Watergate and everything. So, of course, we're going to lose faith in the Republican Party and we're going to jump to whoever the Democrats put in, right? We've talked about how that's happened several times. So that's another reason why that's an easy win for Carter in 76. Okay. All right, number 5 says, in an effort to correct previous wrongs, the U.S. agrees to give up what area in 1999? And that is the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is now controlled and maintained by Panama. So we hand that over in 1999, which, that's a long time. You know, that's almost 100 years, almost, that we have controlled the canal and had it under our government's control. Number 6, this was an agreement reached under the guidance of the president between Israel and Egypt, which helped bring some peace to the Middle East. And this is the Camp David Accords. Camp David Accords. And it's named Camp David after the location to where Carter and both the leader of Israel and Egypt, that's where they went to stay. And it's not what you think when you think camp. You know, it's pretty much putting a, I don't know, 6-star. I don't even know if there is a 6-star hotel, but you know, the fanciest hotel you can think of out in the middle of nowhere. You know, this is the kind of resort they're staying at for this meeting, but it's called Camp David. Let's see, number 7 says, this was the crisis that involved U.S. hostages and religious fundamentalists. And this is the Iranian hostage crisis. Iranian hostage crisis, to where we have 54 Americans that are taken hostage by the new Shah that comes in power oh, I can't even think now. Where are they at? I want to say, never mind. Oh my God, guys, I'm having such a blind moment. It's the Iranian hostage crisis, so it's Iran. Oh my God, pretend like I didn't even say that. So anyway, the new Shah comes in power. The new Shah is anti-American. So he allows people to go and storm the U.S. Embassy. They take 52 people hostage for over a year. It's like, how many? It's like 444 days. And we tried so many failed missions to sneak in and get them out. Because another thing that we've always, not only said, but try to pride ourselves on is that we don't negotiate with terrorists. So obviously we were not willing to do just anything to get these people back. But that's also what's going to end Carter's popularity, is that he can't ever get these people back. And it's actually Reagan that comes in 1980 that brings everybody back home. All right, last two questions. Number 8 says, she was the author of the environmentalist book, Silent Springs. This is an old question, but we're still very much about the environment in the 70s. But it's Rachel Carson. And it's been, oh gosh, it's probably been several weeks since we talked about Rachel Carson. But yeah, because she writes it in 1962. But again, still very much an environmentalist focus. And number 9, this area was the site of the worst U.S. nuclear power plant accident, and it's 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island, and that is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg, PA, 3 Mile Island. And it was horrible. We had radiation that leaked out from those nuclear reactors. It was seeping down into the groundwater that people are drinking and showering in and everything. And it was horrible. Not only was it a mess to clean up, but it's hurting and killing people and wildlife. I mean, it was a mess. So we realized we got to be more careful about things like that. Okay, all right, so stop there. Later on, when you get time, you can jump down and do those review questions at the bottom just to see how you did, but that is definitely optional. All right, in your package, 27-3, fill in the blank, and just all the details that you probably ever wanted to know about how Hispanic and Latino Americans are doing in the U.S. during the 60s and 70s. All right, so it says Latino Americans face discrimination and segregation in the Southwest. Number 1, the numbers of Mexicans living in the Southwest steadily increased in the 1800s because the U.S. acquired territory, I know, super small blank, acquired territory where Mexicans lived. Because if you remember back in American One, if it was from California over to Kansas and down to Texas, all that was part of Mexico way back in the day. So whenever we had the Mexican-American War and we got that new territory, it was primarily Mexicans that are living in that area. Number 2, most Mexican Americans in the Southwest lived in barrios, B-A-R-R-I-O-S, which we actually, I think, used that word when we were talking about the Wild West back in January. So barrios, which was a product of the region's history and discrimination against Latinos. Number 3 says in the 1930s, federal officials launched a series of deportations that became known as the reparation. So it is definitely not a new thing. You know, everybody is still talking about the border between us and Mexico, having a lot of illegal immigrants coming across the border. I mean, this is nothing new. You know, I mean, this has been happening ever since 1845, you know, and the Mexican-American War. I mean, it's been happening ever since. Number 4 says, in 1954, the Eisenhower administration began a program that deported more than, this is crazy, 3.7 million. 3.7 million Mexicans over a 3-year period. 3.7. So here again, you know, how many people are going back and researching these facts when they get mad at Trump, or when they get mad at other presidents, you know, for deporting, you know? How many presidents have deported more than 3.7 in the last, you know, few years or decades, right? But anyway, just fun facts. Let's see, Latino civil rights organizations fought against discrimination. Number 5 says the League of United Latin American Citizens ended segregation. That's your blank. Segregation in public places in Texas. Number 6 says the American GI Forum was founded to protect the rights of Latino veterans who were denied medical services by Veterans Affairs. Veteran Affairs. So not getting the same assistance and medical treatment that other war veterans were. All right, section 3, organizations and protests led by Latin Americans was successful on many fronts. Number 7, Cesar Chavez and Doris, we're just going to say Dolores because I'm going to butcher her last name, organized groups that cooperated in a strike to demand union organization. I know, big word, small space. Union organization. Increased wages and better benefits. Number 8 says the groups founded by Chavez and we're just going to say Dolores again, merged, that's your blank, merged to become the United Farm Workers. Number 9 says the new union continued a nationwide boycott of table grapes. Bet you didn't know there was a difference in grapes, but they boycotted table grapes. And table grapes, if you again, if you pay that close attention to grapes when you go buy them, so you've got 2 different packages of grapes to choose from. What are those different packages? What's the difference if you pay attention?
Don't pay attention.
So, I mean, you know, like I said, if you actually look and pay attention, and I didn't pay attention one time and got the wrong bag because I was just in a hurry. So table grapes are the grapes that are seedless. And regular grapes are the ones that just get picked fresh off the vine. They still have the seeds all in them. And usually those tend to be a little bit bigger because the seedless grapes, for obvious reasons, have been genetically modified to be seedless. So there you go, fun fact. Number 10 says in 1969, protests by Mexican American Youth Organization led to creation of a bilingual, and you just want to put bilingual ed, but it's bilingual education. So bilingual ed program in which immigrant students are taught in their own language while they learn English. And again, we call that today the ESL program, to where it's English as a second language, but same thing though. Number 11 says a new political party called, and it's all divided up. And if you want to know how to spell this out, it's actually on, I don't know what page in your packet it is. For mine, it's the back page, but the one that has the politics and protesting, those boxes. The organization is in box 6, and it's La Raza Llanada. La Raza Llanada. So if you want to know how to space that out and spell it, I just figured I'd show you where to find it. Which translated means the United People. It helped to elect Latino candidates at the local levels. And number 12 says in 1969, students at the University of California at Berkeley staged a sit-in to demand the creation of a Chitano Studies program. And that's C-H-I-A-N-O. Chitano Studies program. Again, I apologize. I know I'm saying all this probably super wrong, but at least, you know, I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not going to try and act all smooth when I pronounce this stuff, because I know I'm wrong, and my Spanish is so incredibly rusty, because it is very much true. You don't use it, you will lose it. That is a fact, because as many classes of Spanish as I have had from high school to college, I should be speaking it pretty fluently. Hey, did you know? And I actually talked to Miss Hilger about this last year when we were talking about Spanish. You know that you are getting a good understanding of a foreign language if you dream in that language and it makes sense. Like you're having a dream and you're having a conversation with somebody and what you're actually saying to them makes sense. It's not just random words, you know, Pelontes and gato, right? It's not like random words. Like if it actually makes sense and you understand what you're saying, that means you're getting it. So fun fact, because I asked her that, I was like, hey, what language do you dream in? Because she is bilingual, you know? And she said she's never even thought about it. And I thought this was so cool because I'm making like psychological questions happen here. And she said she's never thought about it before, but she never talks in her dreams, you know? And my analysis, because, you know, I'm just a psychology professor on the side, my analysis of that is that her brain doesn't want to have to pick. So she just doesn't talk in her dreams, you know? So that way she doesn't, you know, choose one or over the other, right? Because she said it just depends on who she's talking to as to what language she's talking in. Like if she's talking to her grandmother, she's speaking to her in Spanish, whereas, you know, if she's out and about and she's talking to other teachers, she's going to talk to them in English, you know? So anyway, thought that was interesting. Okay. All right. So tomorrow, to wrap up, we're just going to look at, we're going to talk about the story because I think the story is fascinating. I love doing that story in class. And then we'll do the reteaching activity, the one that I was talking about with the charts. We'll look at this one, and we're done with your IDs. So we'll probably just briefly look at some of the questions about the 1980s in your review sheet. And that'll be it. Now, I realize your review sheet also has that section on modern America. If we have time and you guys want to talk about it, we can, as just some extra facts. I am going to go ahead and put all of my, even the ones that we don't get to between now and the end of the week, I'm going to go ahead and post so that, you know, it's completely up to you. If you want to go in and fill in the extra in those last couple of pages, you can. It'll be there. And I'll probably go ahead and do videos going over the extra pieces. Again, totally optional after tomorrow if you want to actually look at any of that or write anything down. But that's it. We'll wrap up our packet stuff tomorrow and be done. And like I said, next week is primarily for teachers, for us to be working on grades. And I've got a ton of stuff that I got to go in and put in for T6. But T6, and I don't remember if we put that out there yet, but after you see your grades go in for T6, if there's a class that you're considering taking a pass in, or there's a class that you want the actual letter grade in, that's when you start making that decision if you haven't already. So I'm sure if he hasn't sent anything out, or he might send a reminder email, all that's coming sometime next week. So, alrighty, that is it. Questions, comments, concerns? No, you're good. Okay. All right. We'll wrap it up tomorrow. See you guys later.
Yeah.